This is Let's Talk Radical Radio, getting to the root causes of the important issues of the day. This on-the-air community forum believes your voice matters and welcomes all thoughts and views without judgment. Please join today's conversation by calling 415-663-8492, or you can tweet us at Let's Talk on KWMR.
Yes, I have the tweet box right in front of me, so do tweet us. Do. Your hosts today are Robin Carpenter leading our conversation, Mary Frank answering the phones, and I'm Paul Riffel.
And when you call in and hear the phone ringing, please hang on. When you hear me say you're on the air, please give us your first name, turn down your radio, and please watch your language.
And today we're talking about the Great Dying, and we're asking how you feel, how it's impacting you, all of the things that are happening with climate change. We'd love for you to join our conversation by calling us on 415-663-8492. And here are my notes. I'm Robin Carpenter, and I recently got back from 1 month back home where I grew up, which is the New Orleans, Mobile, Gulf Coast. And part of the reason for our trip, my husband and I, was to decide if we might return or retire there because of the lack of affordability of housing in West Marin. And things are changing so quickly back home in my beloved bayous and barrier islands, it was clear that most of it will not be there in 20 years. And that most of it has become unsafe to swim in from the increase in what's always been there, but a flesh-eating bacteria that's making it very dangerous to even wade in the waters, to the northward movement of alligators and the degradation of the seafood. I was meeting with fifth-generation shrimpers and oyster folks and seeing places that used to be barrier islands and some of my favorite childhood fishing spots gone really made me feel the current and coming loss in a really visceral way. So I find myself, since I got back here to my West Marin home, teetering back and forth between grief and then the idiocy of wasting precious moments of joy in the here and now with grieving. So is it an indulgence to feel I have to grieve? Is it crazy that I feel guilty when I'm having a really nice, expensive gin martini and listening to the thrushes near the creek on my beautiful deck? I have this real mix of emotions around all of this. So it's interesting because one of our regular listeners and someone who gives us really insightful feedback, Murray Seward, had written to me and had said it was very powerful for him to have someone's personal story with personal experiences of the loss, because it's so huge and it's so big that it's kind of overwhelming. So what do we do? How do we access it? Humans aren't really made to take on something that big that seems very unsolvable. So I'm really curious.
You were lucky in a way to, in a terrible way, to witness it firsthand, because we're all sitting here, we're making plans for ocean rise and thinking about, shall we barricade Highway 1? Shall we jack up our houses a little bit? But you're seeing it firsthand because of the low-lying islands that are disappearing, all the old fishing spots that are going away.
And those coastal
brought it
areas.
home. How could you not grieve? I mean, that was your home, your place you were born in. And if London was going underwater, which it has in the past.
It might.
I would be grieving about that, I guess.
I think it's really interesting because coastal areas are what's going to be impacted very quickly, and the models are speeding up for what's happening, that it's going to be happening faster than we thought. And I had really kind of had the feeling, Andy and I can go back home. We can afford to retire there. And, I know I'll probably, by the time I'm leaving the planet, the impacts will start to be seen. But I saw the speed up of it, and also things I didn't really think about, that the rest of the world that's not so quote-unquote civilized or wealthy, they've been feeling the impacts of climate change and the degradation to the planet for a long time.
Are they talking about it?
What do you mean?
When you went home, are people discussing it?
Very interesting. They don't. Because I asked, everybody was really excited about there's a new Boeing plant being built there, and there are additions. Mobile is a very large, beautiful port city, and it's the second oldest city in America. It's a very beautiful city.
Is that right?
Yes, it is.
St. Augustine?
St. Augustine is first.
And
Mobile.
Oh.
And so I asked my dad, I mean, we're so used to there. When you grow up in bayou country and wetlands like that, you are very used to seeing things shift, especially
Right.
on barrier islands. They shift their shape, so you're kind of used to that. Or after a big hurricane, places like where you canoed up into the bayous or
Right.
swamps
But
will be
what
different.
but what you saw was not just the regular sort of ebb and flow of the dunes and the islands.
No, not at all. And I mean,
Interesting.
I've been knowing it in sort of the whole New Orleans and Louisiana area where we've lost much of the wetlands, and
Right.
that's been because of dredging and all the oil activity going on. But this culmination, I think the thing that really hit me the most was not the last time I was home a couple years ago. It wasn't too long after the BP spill, and so it seemed normal that, okay, we still can't go in the water. The flesh-eating bacteria goes up in count because of the release of the oil. They thrive on the oil. But so we've always had times, even growing up, where we knew that the waters weren't safe, like in July maybe, and times like that. But also alligators were never much more than 20 miles north of, say, Mobile or the coast. So even friends of mine that live up in Birmingham and further north and up towards Tennessee, there are alligators up there now. They're in the lakes. So there's a level of
Watch out for your poodles.
You don't want to go swimming. I mean, to me, that thing of not being able to go run, jump in the water and feel okay about it.
Swimming hole's got a gator in it.
Yeah, I mean, and we had gators when we were growing up. We would see them in swimming holes, but the proliferation. So it's also the shift in the diversity of what's there, and the bacteria, and Wait, just see, we have a caller there. Yeah. I got slightly distracted. But there was a shift also in that now people are worried about Zika. People are worried about, other tropical diseases, dengue fever, things like that. But I was surprised no one was really talking about a plan for the global rise.
Okay, we have a caller. Hello, caller. You're on the air. What's your name?
My name is Charles.
Hi, Charles.
Uh-oh.
Hello, Charles.
How are you today?
Well, I actually have a plan to release saltwater crocodiles onto the beaches of Inverness.
We do need a top predator back in this area.
Come on. It has to happen, and it'll solve so many of our problems. So
saltwater crocodiles. I love it. It'll be just like Palau.
If I can, which is just to suggest that even though all of this evidence that we observe ourselves or that science, records and can express to us, to say that's true, and we should think about that. The other side of it, I think, and Mary and Robin, you're going to hate this. Paul Raffel will probably also hate it, but he's too nice to tell me so. is that there is a problem in the baby boom generation, which is when you take life from the perspective that self-expression is your highest duty, then when you're no longer able to express yourself and you start feeling your mortality, it's not you that dies, it's the world that you have created from within yourself that is going to disappear.
Are you saying there's not such a thing as climate change?
I preface my remarks by saying that there's certainly lots and lots of terrible things going on, including what we call climate change, but the perspective that it's too late, that it's time to grieve, that it's time to mourn, as though there wasn't a battle here to be fought or something to be done about it.
Well, but what spurs you into battle? What emotion would you name that?
I would say that I put it in the way that I put it in the newspaper when I was interviewing Paul Fenn about this, which is just that our knowledge of how bad things are is actually a new thing. Normally in human history, when really bad things happen, they happen in a split second. The invading army just arrived. The Black Death is just at your door. In this case, we can see this happening, and that's a huge scientific and human achievement. And so the next question becomes, well, what are we going to do about it? So my argument against grief is that there is everything to be done about it, and in fact, we're in a unique position to start thinking about dealing with each one of these problems. Like, fossil fuels, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I don't want to yell at you about this. I happen to agree with you, but I only in part, because I think we have to recognize it. I'm sorry, hang on.
Keep talking.
Okay, we have to excuse me, we have to recognize what's going on. But that knowledge is power, Charles. It's like you have to know it, you have to grieve it, you have to let go of the grief, and then you have to go into action. And, I think you do have to be conscious and aware in order for there to be people motivated to know what to do. And part of that consciousness shift is grieving. Grieve for 24 hours, cry your eyes out, and then start being creative.
Well, time is up, Wes.
Well, okay, so I just want to
gird your loins.
I just want to interject that by me saying grieving, I'm not saying we're giving up. I am saying that the first step, just like what Murray said to me in our email exchange.
Is this Murray Bookchin? I mean, he's been dead since 2006, but he's really great.
Oh, Murray Seward?
No, Bookchin, sorry.
Oh, no. Murray's alive and kicking. But what he was saying was, when we start that, like for me, having such a visceral, I think when we grieve and really get it, and to go and mourn through the process and have it be very, very real, that this is real, this is really happening, that is very empowering. But first, you do have to grieve. And our culture is such a sucky culture about grief. Western culture is like, okay, somebody died. Okay, take a week off, get over it, get back to work. Grief is an informative, empowering thing. And going through those stages of, so many of us are in denial that it's a serious issue, or if it hasn't really touched you, you haven't really yet yourself personally lost something. There's something about the personal loss that is what you're saying, Charles, to me, that speeds up. Like, you know what? My idea of me and Andy sitting on the beach on Dauphin Island and retiring and, hanging around and writing and drinking gin and tonics, what a dumb idea that was. My God.
Look, not so bad.
But what I'm saying is, like, it woke me up. It's like, wait a minute. I'm not going to have that luxury. It's not going to be happening at 2060 or 2070. It's happening now. And so I have to really, first of all, so I felt like it was my goodbye tour in a way, that I don't think I'm going to see New Orleans and Mobile like that. In 5 or 10 years, it could be gone the way it is. So I feel like I want to be able to. I had this experience about a year ago. I was at the top of Nob Hill at the Big Four having a cocktail. And there I am sitting in the place dedicated to the robber barons of old and everything that's screwed the world up so badly. But I was certainly enjoying the big leather chairs and the beautiful dark wood and the piano music in the background and my perfectly made martini. And I just had this wave of guilt, like, you're just reveling in what has screwed the planet up. So I think having these feelings and knowing, like, okay, so will Paris will 2 or 3 generations from now never get to know Paris or Venice or New Orleans or whatever, and letting that go, letting go this attachment to it's terrible that my great-grandchildren will never see Paris or never eat wild salmon.
Well, they'll see a different Paris.
There'll be a different world, and maybe in this different world we have to let go of those things that we found so beautiful because the foundations were laid on the backs of slaves and colonialism.
Of course, and we were very good at it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so there's also, to me, in the grieving process, there's an awakening and facing truth. You know, if you've ever had the death of a loved one, where you had a complex relationship with them, you have all kinds of emotions that come up that you don't want to tell other people, like relief.
It's sort of grief and guilt all at the same time.
Yeah.
Right now.
And then the dark side to grief. I'll just state this briefly, and it comes from a very Catholic perspective, from being from the South or Louisiana, whatever you may be able to identify. And I'll use the example of, say, people who have affairs and relationships. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes their desire to tell their partner about their affair is not because it serves any specific positive purpose. It's to unburden themselves.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to deal with the difficulty and the internal contradiction of, say, loving someone and not loving someone, or loving the planet and not loving the planet by what you do by it. And so you get away from that crisis with your grief. or with your confession or with your unburdening.
I don't think it's getting away from it's not getting away from your humanity. You're going to feel sad if you have huge loss that's very meaningful, but it can be a motivator to come up with solutions. It doesn't have to be the end.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the thing with grief is if you think about the traditional stages of grief where, you know, shock and denial and anger and then depression, and then it's about accepting and taking action. So I think that when you have all this wash of emotions internally, to sort of feel them, go through them, sort them out, and
I agree, Robin. I'm just saying there's a dark side here that you should recognize, which is another function of the religious ritual and the plague of sorrow and grief that you know we get into is expiation. Is getting rid of the guilt, is getting rid of your bad feelings about it.
Yeah, but the other thing about going through that process and not ignoring them or wringing our hands is that pain calls us to heal and to act. And what we need now is action.
Ideally, yes, and I will completely agree with it. I would just be careful with your emotions. That's all I would say.
Yeah, and I see that. And that's, to me, one of the reasons I wanted to do this show is because I've been feeling since I got back, like this internal, like, sloshing around of, like, you know, trying to function day to day, but feeling like I want to cry. Or going to Bolinas the other day, which I love so much. It also feels like home. And seeing the lagoon silted in and this or that and thinking, will this even be here too? So it is about, like, my personal loss.
And I would say, I mean, this is very difficult. This is why I think you guys will hate, and no doubt then immediately cut me off. Which is that
cut him off before he says anything.
The boomer generation is one of the most narcissistic groups of people in the United States you could ever imagine. And now as they face the mortality, they have become utterly pessimistic. From being the most positive generation in history, the most pessimistic generation in history, like in a heartbeat. And I think that's quite sad, and I think actually they're burdening the subsequent generations with their pessimism. So, yes, it's good to grieve and then to act. I think there is something darker going on here where there's a mood of pessimism that's being handed down, which is saying, well, it doesn't matter. It's going to happen, right? It's too late. And that too late mentality is the thing that I really, find so destructive.
I guess I haven't seen that at all, especially in Marin, where we've got, sea level rise Marin, and we've got so many people working on projects around that.
I think, and also it's an added burden to everyday life. Everyone's just trying to survive anyway, and to think for people to try and take on this problem of global climate change. I mean, it seems huge, and most people are just going to want to make dinner, have a drink, go to sleep, go to work next day, raise the kids. It all becomes localized. Is that the boomer generation? I don't know. I think that's just humanity, isn't it?
To lay at your door, but just name it. No good Mexican places in Point Reyes Station. Your fault. I get it. Yes, the answer to these things are local, but again, it appears contradictory. The fact that we know that this global phenomenon exists is actually a testament to the progress, if I can use that word,
right,
of the civilization. So it shouldn't, ironically, be a cause, a crushing, sort of weight. It should actually be like, hey, we know this is happening before it's happening. And then when you look at, say, sea level rise, not to accept it as a kind of fait accompli or
no. No.
See these people who are not scientists who will tell you quite firmly and frankly, it's over.
Right. Well,
I hear that in West Marin all the time. So that sentiment isn't here. I don't know.
I think isn't that sort of that's just the sort of we can't deal with it anymore. We're tuning it out. Isn't that a human thing to do? I think.
Yeah, it is a human thing to do to some extent. I would agree. I think that it happened long before now, and actually has different historical antecedents in the case, say, of the boomers. I think there was massive frustration in the 1970s, and then certainly afterwards, and we've lived through now 35 years of, all of those beautiful dreams of the 60s and 70s really being crushed. And I'll reference my own work again. I was talking to Sim Vanderen. He had all these great ideas for things that could have been done in the 70s. They were trying to do.
And were shut down by the corporate greed, the neoliberals that came in, right?
And even local politics ultimately frustrated lots of them. So they didn't fail because they were bad ideas, and they should be remembered. What should not be remembered? The music of the 1970s.
Thank you, Charles. We'll just
that we can forget.
We'll just put on Casey and the Sunshine Band for you as we fade you out.
It's a hope. I'm hopeful.
Good.
Good. We need hope. Thank you so
Charles.
much. Thank you.
This is Let's Talk Radio with hosts Robin Carpenter, Mary Frank, and I'm Paul Raffel. Please do call us on 415-663-8492 and tell us how you're dealing, what you're feeling around this global climate change deal, and what are you grieving? Are you feeling lost or helpless? And you can also tweet us at Let's Talk on KWMR with your thoughts and opinions.
You know, it's really interesting because I was, doing some research, and I was talking last week to a community member, Constance Washburn, and she's been doing some work that's Joanna Macy developed called Work That Reconnects, and they really want to help people, reconnect and feel the grief, reconnect, do these things because you need to do that in order to be part of the solutions and part of the changing process.
I think it was an interesting point that Charles made was that there's too much information for us to assimilate without feeling bad or rotten.
Yes, hello, we have a caller, and may I have your name, please?
Yeah, this is Charlie.
Hi, Charlie.
That was too much information for me.
A fellow baby boomer.
It seemed like your conversation about, the planet and, trying to save the environment and all that was starting to lean into a little bit about, personal stuff, too.
Yeah.
Which I think is all encompassed. But, I've got to admit that for years, I've been very depressed about what's going on, and I finally realized that it was kind of a cop-out, and to start doing things about it, and to try to find a positive way to approach it. I have a granddaughter who's 9, and I want her to have clean water to drink and fresh air to breathe, So whenever I start beating my breast and hitting my head against the wall, I go out and do something. I start a petition, or I sign one, or, I try to talk to people with respect, other working class people who try to deny that there's global warming and all that kind of stuff. But there's something about, I think Robin said it, about getting into it and then getting out of it. On a level about lamentation, there's a great piece of work, and I'm proud that I was there on the spot when Albert King, the great blues player, recorded a piece called Blues Power. And he basically talked about how if you got it, the blues, about something, get into it, express it, get up, and keep going. It's an incredible piece of work. It took 13 minutes. But, it is, when I was raising my kids, I really kept my mouth shut about where I thought the environment was going, in the clutches of big business, because I wasn't going to tell them that I thought that the planet was dying. I was going to give them a chance to do something about it and that. But I really do think that there's no carpet to sweep the dust under. We live in this atmosphere and in this environment, so it's like our backs are against the wall, and we got to come out swinging.
Well, I'd like
I don't mean kill anybody, but you know what I mean?
Yeah,
anyway.
I do. And I just wanted to mention that something Clarissa Pinkola Estes said, and when she talks about small acts helping, she says, it's not the task of fixing the entire world all at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that is within our reach. Any small, calm thing that one soul can do to help another soul to assist some portion of this poor, suffering world and help immensely, it is not given to us to know which acts or by whom will cause the critical mass to tip forward and enduring good. But I believe it's possible, too, Charles. I think if we do, can we turn it all around? I don't know, but I see young people coming up with such vision and such talent and so many gifts who are jumping on this that it gives me hope. But we still have to grieve what will be lost, but we have to shine the light on the people coming up who are doing something about it.
Well, Charlie, I love what you were saying about the blues because, having grown up in the area I grew up in, that was a real part of our culture. And, the whole point of the blues, as you were saying, is you just go in, you jump into the pool of it, and you just let it out, and then you come out the other side, and there's something, I don't know, I think it's a very organic process of when you actually have a realization of something, and it really is a visceral realization, not just you're coming from your head and you're going to your, sea level rise meetings and things like that, and you're doing your work, but there's also this point at which it really hits you in your soul that, and I think that, it's interesting because there is an actual website, Charlie, that I found. It's a website for scientists, and because scientists are trying to form sort of support for each other that are working on these issues, especially the scientists working on, and some of whom I know, on the thing with coral reefs, and having been a diver, watching coral reefs that I knew bleach out. And so it's called Is This How You Feel? And the scientists can write letters in their handwriting, and they just post the letters so that they can they're out there doing the work. But they have these feelings that they want to share with each other about. I've asked another colleague to go track that reef. I can't do it anymore because I've been tracking it, for 18 years, and I want to swap off on that.
It's a spur to action, and it's not wallowing in grief, as Charles was sort of saying that it's incapacitating if you do that. It's a natural reaction to what's going on, especially if it's your life's work like those guys.
And also, it's not dissimilar to when you lose a loved one.
Yeah.
You can stuff it and pretend you're not grieving, but you're going to get sick, or or whatever. You have to acknowledge the grief in order to move on.
Well, I think
because the body doesn't lie. You can jive yourself with your mind all day long, but you're right. You're going to have a response. And not to interrupt you, but I just wanted to say we were the duck and cover generation. We were the ones who got the information that the entire human race plus a whole bunch of other creatures could be ended forever. And now we have inside us, as beings, as animals, as creatures, and I think, I've been having to deal with this and acknowledge it and then get past it. The whole thing could end. And I don't think there's ever been a time when, in the human race, when we ever had to deal with that absoluteness.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And I really appreciate you bringing that up because I know that Charles before was talking about, we need to be optimistic or whatever. But I think we're fools if we don't know that, the change is here, the change is coming, and it's not, and I believe that we can have survival of some human habitat and do some turnaround, but it's not going to be pretty. And there's going to be a lot of death, and there's going to be a lot of goodbyes to things, and to pretend that it's narcissistic to feel that. It's if you've ever known of anyone that's worked in a refugee camp or in situations like that, or you've ever been somewhere after a tornado or a hurricane, which I have been, those initial stages of how horrifying it is while you keep working forward.
Yeah, of course. You have to grieve for what's gone, what's been destroyed. Well, thank you, Charlie.
I have to salute you guys because you're dealing with it. You made this a subject, and you're externalizing it, and you're giving us, listeners, not only a chance to tune into what's being said, to also express ourselves. So I will thank you.
Well, thank you, Charles.
I'll be listening. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much.
I just wanted to, I think we need to mention our underwriter. This is our little break
we have a station ID, too.
All right.
Okay, this is KWMR Community Radio for West Marin, 90.5 in Point Reyes Station, and 89.9 in Bolinas, 92.3 in the San Geronimo Valley, and streaming live on KWMR.org. And we would like to thank our underwriters, Bear Valley Inn. Bear Valley Inn is a turn-of-the-century bed and breakfast, a green business serving local and organic ingredients in continental breakfasts. Rates and availability at 415-663-1777 or online at bearvalleyinn.com. That's Bear Valley, like the animal, in.com. Again, we thank you so much. Our other underwriter is Hahnemann Labs. KWMR is supported by Hahnemann Labs, a homeopathic pharmacy and pharmaceutical manufacturer, presenting a lecture, Homeopathy for the Health of Livestock, on Tuesday, July 19th, from 10 to 11:30 a.m. at the Point Reyes Community Presbyterian Church. Information and registration at HahnemannLabs.com. That's HAHNEMANN Labs.com. We'd also like to thank, hang on a second. Zenith. We would also like to thank Zenith Instant Printing. KWMR is sponsored by Zenith Instant Printing in Novato, serving the community since 1975. Zenith Instant Printing helps with printing and mailing projects from concept to completion, or anywhere in between. 415-897-0454. That's 415-897-0454, or online at zenithinstantprinting.com.
Yeah, well, Charlie, I like that about our generation, of course, being brought up as duck and cover, that there was imminent threat of mutually assured destruction during our childhood. I mean, and in our teens, and.
Okay, we have another caller on line 2. What's your name, please?
Hi, this is Mia from KWMR.
Hi, Mia.
Hi, Mary. Hi, Robin. Hi, Paul.
Hello.
I just wanted to mention we had the time capsule project here at KWMR for our spring pledge drive, and we just got a lot of interesting submissions that kind of had to do with this topic. So I don't personally have a lot to say about it, but I just wanted to say if other people are interested in hearing the community's views about a lot of this sort of future verdict stuff, check out the Time Capsule portal on our website on kwmr.org.
Oh, great idea.
You can see actually what other community members have written about what they think about the future, what they want to tell people in the future, and a lot of these issues are kind of covered in that.
Very good.
I thought that was really interesting, Mia, when we started seeing some of the things come in, how many people... And when we first talked about the concept of a time capsule that would be open in 100 years, and all of us saying it's up on Black Mountain, we're going, that might be the beach, in 100 years. And, it was really it made all of us really think when the station decided to do that project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was definitely a theme. So I just wanted to let people know it's on our website under the events link.
A lot of apologizing going on.
Yeah, I know, it was a little overwhelming to get all of those. So there was some cheerfulness, but there was a lot of apologizing as well.
Mia, if you don't mind me asking you being the younger generation, sort of how you feel. Do you feel there's a generational difference in how people are looking at climate change?
I really don't know. I mean, I think it's sort of runs the gamut with the same as your generation in terms of some people being more optimistic, some people being a little more pessimistic. So I don't really know what the difference between the generations is, but I think in general the people who are more environmentally active, so to say, seem to be a little more pessimistic.
So it's more mindset rather than generational in a way.
The people that I know who it's their passion, like the environment is their passion, they seem to be the ones who are a little more concerned because they seem to...
Well, they know a lot about it, too.
Exactly.
They've been doing the research.
They have the data.
Yeah, those of us, myself included, who are not as passionate about that are either we're blind to it or we are a little more positive about it. I'm not sure which. So
thanks, Mia.
Thank you.
Thanks. A great program.
Thanks.
Bye.
You're listening to Let's Talk Radio with co-hosts Robin Carpenter, Mary Frank, and I'm Paul Raffel. Share your views, won't you, by calling 415-663-8492 or tweet us at Let's Talk on KWMR.
It's interesting. I read some of the letters of the scientists on that site. Is this how you feel? And one person was talking about optimism in terms of this. This is Anna Harpa, who's a research fellow at University of Exeter in the UK. And she was talking about feeling frustrated, the huge challenge. And then she says, I still think there's a reason for optimism. I sometimes feel powerless, but what climate change does is presents us with a huge opportunity to redefine how we live on the planet. Humans are remarkably resilient, creative, and intelligent. And over the past couple of centuries, we've gone from a world of manual labor and subsistence agriculture to a world where we can buy iPads and vending machines before we fly across the planet on a plane. So these inventions have rocked the world, but why should we expect people to stop inventing, creating, exploring? So she's saying that she also talked a little bit in hers about, and you see this from like Derek Jensen and Deep Green Resistance and other groups, that, you know, if we're going to be a post-carbon world, because everybody on the planet is pretty much bought and sold by the 1%, it's going to probably have to be a collapse as opposed to an intelligent, thoughtful transition, because power and greed and money and control are seizing the day at this time. So I know some of my friends feel like the collapse, it will be ugly. Millions will die. A lot of stuff will happen, but at the end, with that collapse, gives us the opportunity to be on the planet in a very different way, and that the original peoples and Aboriginal peoples, wherever there are indigenous people who've been fighting for decades and decades, if not longer, to save their beautiful lands and homes, that they may be leading the way. That's kind of what I get from what Derek says in Deep Green Resistance.
Yeah, Deep Green Resistance. There was a... Yeah, I'd like to know what their calls to action actually mean. I tried to find out what their action suggestions are, and there's a lot of railing going on, and we're all done for, and and it's ridiculous to turn off your hot tub and think that that's going to save the world, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's all about individual actions don't mean anything, and why even bother? And yet they're saying that the system is doomed, and we're going to have to throw down the system ourselves and then remake it. And what they say, the action that they recommend is the same old stuff we've always done, which is petitions and go to meetings and walk in the street. I don't think protests work anymore. How many millions of people protested the Afghan war and Libya, right? Millions of people around the world turned out on one day to protest, and what happened? Nothing. So, the old ways of doing things, the old ways of protesting just don't work anymore. They just deny it, they ignore it, or they don't even acknowledge its resistance, its existence. So you have to think of new ways to do things. And Derek is kind of,
they don't say
old Earth First ways of, monkey wrenching and.
Yeah, because I went to a day-long seminar about 7 or 8 years ago with Derek and others, and talking about which group of us will be underground and really doing things like hacking into systems and disabling banks and actually taking actions that are not legal, and then there'll be supporters above ground that support those that are doing that. But the way I see it is that I'm beginning to see more and more that we're going to have. If we can't get the change, and I don't see that we can, as long in America, our senators and our representatives are all bought and sold. When you have on this bill on the DARK Act for GMO labeling, when you have 60 senators voting to allow this to happen so that we don't get the labeling, when in their different constituencies, over 85% of their voters and their constituencies were against them doing that. So that no longer do our representatives, they don't even care what their voters think because they're bought and sold. So when you have that as an issue, then you can't rely on the government to change anything.
Right. But you can rely on community. Look what Bernie did. Bernie did the impossible. I think he's going to go down as the group. No.
He did.
He
did.
And
how does the work come out of that? That's what we have to see.
Well, we're going to see. But, it can be done. It can be done.
But what was accomplished? It
was out of the norm.
Yeah,
and that's how we have to behave.
So to get that power out of the norm.
Yeah,
so then it's
also,
like, how do we make it? How do we make it do something? So it's like the Occupy movement. All this energy, all these people, but was anything accomplished? No, the bailouts happened. Nobody went to jail. So will the Bernie movement? Will all the people involved? We've shown we can raise our own money. We don't need the corporations. but we still can't break through, even with all of that. And even with Hillary's numbers not being very good and unfavorables, the DNC was not going to let that happen,
But he did manage to move the platform further to the left than ever.
But there's nothing in concrete on that platform.
No, and it never is.
Yeah.
But, again, it comes down to local and community. I mean, the great thing about what's happening now is that the truth is coming out. People are maybe for the first time understanding a lot of stuff that was not available to them.
But
wait a minute.
Do you think people listen to the truth? Only those who are aware and awake do.
Well, that's always been true.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not new to this time. That has always been the case. But it has always been a small group of people who have changed everything. Yeah. So who's to say that's not going to... That may be possible.
Let's not forget it is Bastille Day, the 14th of July, and that was certainly a smallish group of people right there in Paris who overthrew the system right there.
Yeah.
It was
and again, it's like
violent.
When someone asked Margaret Mead, I'm repeating this, but they said, well, what makes you think a small group of people can change the world? And she said, my dear, it has always been a small group of people who have changed the world. And we have the advantage of the Internet. I mean, there's a curse about it and a blessing about it.
That's true.
And that we can connect globally without those guys. We don't need the corporations. We can connect and get information that we could not get before.
Right.
So that's another tool in the kit.
Which is a double-edged sword, right? There's too much information.
Yep.
There's too much ability for misinformation to be broadcast and disinformation. And that whole thing, as I was saying earlier, that Charlie brought up, that I'm thinking that it's epigenetically in our DNA.
For our generation.
That it's all coming to an end, because it was coming to an end. It was just the push of a couple of buttons and we were all gone, right?
And you know what's really
40 years.
What's interesting is the generations after us, baby boomers, they weren't having that. They were not having that. And I remember, because Cuba is a spit away from Mobile. You can sail your sailboat in a day to Cuba. And so we were...
Oh, yeah, duck and cover. Remember having to jump under the desk?
So we were all issued dog tags as children because because of the naval base and everything there, so our bodies could be identified. So, that we all wore dog tags in that area, because we knew we would be one of the first areas hit between Pensacola and Gulfport, where you had the naval base and the Air Force and all that stuff down there, and that we're right by Cuba.
Not
we
to
knew
mention the refineries.
So we were issued dog tags, and and our parents had to tell us why we had dog tags. We're all have dog tags because if we get hit, so we can identify the bodies.
So maybe that's
and that's Sherry note.
So I think you're right, Paul. I've totally kind of spaced that out. But yes, I, as a child, was growing up very much that we were told that, nuclear war could wipe out the planet.
Any second. And what we're seeing now is this sort of slow deterioration, faster than anyone expected, but it's a slow deterioration.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like being in the old saw about the frog in the saucepan, right? You just don't really notice it until, oh, wait, this is getting really hot.
Yeah, and I think, too, the kinds of people that have experienced not just climate change, but the behaviors and actions of the colonialistic, capitalistic system have been feeling this for a long time, like Van Jones talks about. That white people that belong to Sierra Club are thinking, oh, polar bears are on melting ice, and black people are seeing people standing on roofs where they're flooding and dying after the levees broke in Katrina.
Okay.
Forget the polar bears. What about us? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, we have a call. Caller, you're on the air. What's your name?
Bing Gong.
Hey, Bing.
Hi, Bing.
Hi, Paul. Hi, Robin. Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Yeah, I've been listening to your show. It's great you're bringing this out, and we all need to face it and what we're feeling about it. Someone mentioned Joanna Macy's work, and I did a workshop with her about 5 years ago, and the way she sets it up really gets at it, gets at what you feel really down deep about it. You normally just go through your day and look at seeing what's happening on the news and all of that. And it accumulates. And I feel that we're all carrying this, and if you can find a way to tap it, otherwise, we're numb. in that part of ourselves. I think that's Joanna's approach.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like to also put a word out about, Karen Nyhus and I do post-carbon on the second and fourth Mondays. We have a program coming up on Monday, August 8th on elderhoods, conscious elderhoods. Mm. And there is a conscious elder network there's a spin-off off that called the Elder Climate Action Group. And I think all of us who are elders and have grandkids, we naturally are concerned about our grandkids and the future that they're facing. So they're organizing elders to do what they can. Maybe go to Washington to lobby for fee and dividend or ban fracking. Or there was a huge contingent in the March, I guess, in New York City in September of 2014. A lot of elders went to that. So I'd just like to put a word out about, as an elder, step up and get out there to save the planet.
And you've done such amazing work doing that. I mean, you got arrested in Washington protesting the Keystone Pipeline, and you've been to the climate change conferences, and, you've really done so much in that world in your post-carbon radio show that you do with Karn. How do you personally, deal with this? Do you work through with some of the techniques you learned from Joanna Macy, or, did you feel like there was a period of time where you were in deeper grief and then you just moved through it back to doing the work?
Yeah, I tapped into it, and I think that's what moves me to inform people and try to let them know what they can do. I have my moments of despair, but we can't. I think someone said despair is not an option.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah. So thank you for the program.
Thank you, Bing.
Yeah, thank you for calling in.
We'll be listening in on August 8th.
Yeah, I just want to point out some links, if I could.
Sure.
The Conscious Elder Network. I think you can go online and see they've got a lot of links to what elders are doing. There is a Climate Elder Network National Gathering in 2016 in Burlingame, September 18th through the 21st. If you'd like to link in and have the support of fellow elders, that would be something to go to and link in to.
That's great.
Very good.
Thank you so
much.
much.
Thanks, Bing, for calling in.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Lit up souls light up other souls, so that's wonderful. Can you repeat again when the broadcast is?
Yeah, ConsciousElders.org. ConsciousElders.org.
And your broadcast is going to be on Monday, August 8th.
Yeah, Monday, August 8th at 1 p.m.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah. So the work that needs to be done. So, nothing stays the same, though, right?
Yes.
So that is the nature of the world. I guess while Bing was talking there, I was thinking conscious elders and the changes that we've seen in our 60-something years or whatever, and there are places in the world that I would not go back to just because of the changes, not because of climate change, but just because they've become more commercialized or more visitor oriented or whatever. That it would be disappointing to go back. So this climate change thing is one more piece of that, where you kind of want to close your eyes and not see it, but we all know that there's work to be done, so we have to keep trying to do our little bit and trying to do it in our backyard. As Murray Seward was saying, he's for focusing on challenges he can deal with.
I think that's a very wise approach, because that's really all you can do. You go into your world, do the best you can, be as nice as you can, help as much as you can, and that filters out.
And that the ripples will go out from there.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that it's interesting because there's still, I think, as a country and as a world, we're in such denial. I saw this great, it was very clever piece. It was like a 40-minute piece, I wouldn't call it documentary, but it has Arnold Schwarzenegger playing therapist to Bill Nye the Science Guy, and he's going to the therapist to work through the 5 stages of grief. And so for each one, Bill comes in, he goes this and that. And so they were showing footage of brand new construction on Miami Beach.
Oh my God.
The construction and where they're putting things is already below the flood level of $7 and $8 million homes.
Talk about denial.
And you would think, now I would think that if I was if I could build a $7 or $8 million home, then I have a lot of resources. You would think you would have paid somebody to figure out where the new coastline's going to be and build there. So it's interesting that there's still and they don't really have much planning in place to protect Miami.
Maybe that's the ultimate decadence. Look, I can afford to build an $8 million home below the floodplain.
I think it's
disposable.
I think it might be just ignorance,
Right.
People so in their own world that they haven't involved themselves in the situation that we're all in, and they feel untouched by it because they've always been able to have their money save them in every other aspect of their life.
They can afford a hill to run to.
Yeah.
Well, and what was
or a bunker to go into.
What's really interesting is Florida, because in Florida, they outlawed being able to, or the governor put a ban. You cannot use in any governmental documents the term climate change
oh my God.
or global warming. So there was footage of a meeting with a scientist talking to this council, and he was not allowed to say climate change or global warming, and everybody was just laughing because it's like this area that's constantly flooding and now is flooding all the time, and what are they going to do? And it's like, and why is it flooding? Well, and they were trying to come up with terminology, and Bill Nye was in there, and he ran out of the Capitol steps, and he was screaming, like, climate change is, because it's a dirty word there, but Florida, basically 60 to 70% of Florida will be gone in 30 to 40 years.
That's God's will, I say.
And so it is rather...
the sinkhole state.
And it is interesting because... you do see here, I mean, we've got climate change. Hannah Doress started the group about the sea level rise Marin. I'm not sure if I got the title just right, but already looking at the low-lying areas and where there are issues. And, that we're all thinking about that now for here.
Right. And, of course, the danger is that the Coastal Commission of California will apply a one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter thing that will not take in local differences, which they are already doing, and thanks to groups like ESPG up in Marshall, our East Shore Planning Group, we're trying to get them to point out that there are local solutions to huge problems.
And each area is going to be different.
Yeah, Long Beach, what you do in Long Beach doesn't work
up here
on the shores of Tomales Bay, but they're not seeing that yet because, we are the Coastal Commission.
But it is interesting, the lack of, one of the scientists was talking about, he said, how do I feel about climate change? He said, I feel confident that we will reduce emissions to slow global warming to a pace to which we can mostly adapt. Why am I confident? Because in 2015, more than 1.5% of all articles in the New York Times mentioned climate change. This compares to 2% of articles mentioning terrorism and 1.4% that mention refugees. As in other countries, the media profile of climate change is now becoming very high, and politicians and the public are seeing reports of our changing climate almost daily now. And he said, compare this to 1988. He said only 68 papers were published on these topics. So with such strong and growing media and expert, I can't read it because all these letters, it's lovely. They're in handwriting from the scientists. And this is Neville Nichols, a professor emeritus at the School of Earth, Atmosphere, and I can't read his handwriting over there, in Australia. Yeah, at Monash University in Australia. So, there is this new attention. I love that the scientists are coming together to support each other. I mean, I see, my cousin works for NOAA and, what he sees and how that's changed. So, it's really been great. And, oh, my gosh, I just saw the time. Anyway, I appreciate everybody's thoughts and feelings, and I think that, we primates are an adaptable species. And let's see here. I wish to thank all of our listeners and callers today for your participation. I hope you'll tune in every Thursday at 11 because your voice really does matter.
And KWMR does not take a stand on any of the issues discussed on Let's Talk. Opinions expressed on this program are those of the hosts and callers and don't necessarily reflect the views of KWMR, its board of directors, underwriters, or members. And next week we'll be discussing what? I would like to maybe carry on this discussion about optimism and hope.
And solutions.
Where people's hope comes from for solutions. I think it's still a valid... We've touched on it today, but I think I was going to do private prisons, and it's just so depressing, You just
let's have a little hope.
I hope you tune in for another lively discussion.
So we'll talk solutions and hope.
Okay, this has been Let's Talk on KWMR with your hosts Robin Carpenter, Paul Raffel, and I'm Mary Frank.